Hello, hello everyone. So I'm just making this brief recording for anyone who is having difficulty with the calculation of the mean for group data. That is, data that has already been grouped into a frequency distribution. And so we no longer have the individual values from which to calculate our mean. As we um, as we looked at in previous lectures and previous classes, finding the mean for ungrouped data is a fairly straightforward process in that we want to take the sum of all of the values and then divide that by the number of values that we have. So in that sense, it's not very complex, but once data has been put into a frequency distribution, some persons have a bit of a difficulty in terms of the process that we use for finding the mean, so that we don't have the authentic original data. And so we have to do some bit of estimation of the value in order to find the value for the mean. And so what that looks like, for instance, let's look at this example. So you take over as a new employee in a youth service bureau. You are charged with preparing a report for truancy for a group of high school students. Now, you are new. You inherited some data from the person you took over the position from, but the data has already been grouped. You don't have the original data, but you still want to find the mean for the truancy data to get a sense of how many days of school students would have missed over the last academic year. Pardon me. So this is the data that we have. We have the classes, so we see the classes are grouped. And then we have the frequency in terms of how many students miss school for this many days. So 1 to 5 days, if 25 students missing school, 6 to 10 days, 30 students, 11 to 15 days, 30 students, and so on, giving us a total of 124 students. So the sum of the frequencies, or the size of the population in this case, is 124. But what we don't have are those 124 values. They've been grouped into these classes that we have here. But we still want to get a measure of what the mean would be. And so in cases like this, because we know that 25 students said they missed class between 1 to 5 days. We don't know how many students said 1 day, 2 days, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. We know they all came up to 25. So to get the total, what these 25 values would add up to, what we do is we take the midpoint of these classes. So this class goes from 1 to 5. We take the midpoint, which is the average value for 1 to 5. So that would require us adding these two values, dividing by 2 to get the average. So once we get the average of this, we then want to multiply it by 25 to see if we had these 25 values. This is approximately what they would add up to. We do that for all of the classes, and we take the sum of that. Once we have the sum of the midpoint times the frequency, it gives us an estimate of what we would have gotten if we added those values individually. And then we can divide that by the total number of values that we have. And so the formula that we use is the sum of the frequency times the midpoint divided by n, which is either your population size or your sample size, depending on the type of data that you have. And so it's not an exact calculation as we are able to do when we have the original raw data. It's an approximation. And so if you notice here, what we have is the full table with those calculations